Okay, I'm Allison.
And I'm Joe.
And this is Queer Cinema Catchup, the podcast where, let me think, how did I used to do this? So
it's just been so long since we've done this. It's like,
I know, I keep listening to us. We basically had recorded, I want to say, was it like 7? No.
A lot.
8 episodes to get us through the holidays. And we've only just now run out. Queer Cinema Catchup, a podcast where we catch up with one another and with movies, TV, and miscellaneous items through a queer lens. And we do this because a very long time ago, Joe and I used to be neighbors and friends who lived around the corner from one another, and we made movies together in our backyard until one day I tragically and very sadly had to move away. And, years passed. We both continued to love movies. We both had our queer experiences, realizing we were queer, even though we didn't know it. We didn't know that about one another back in the day. Mm-hmm. And then, wow, it's 2024 and it's 2025. And we're roommates, queer roommates who love movies. And we don't make movies in our backyard anymore. We just make podcasts in our living room.
Yes, exactly. Except temporarily over the holidays, we're still separated. But we've been roommates now for over 3 years.
I think so. I think almost like 4. Once you get to January, you're basically at June. So it's almost 4 years.
Yeah. Wow.
But yeah, let's dive into Nosferatu. Do you want to just give the log line and then do our overarching reactions?
Yeah.
Okay. Nosferatu is a Gothic tale of obsession between a haunted young woman and the terrifying vampire infatuated with her, causing untold horror in its wake. Written for the screen and directed by Robert Eggers, a remake of the 1922 silent film Nosferatu, which was inspired by Bram Stoker's 1897 novel Dracula. The film stars Bill Skarsgård as the vampire in question, as well as Nicholas Hoult, Lily Rose Depp, Aaron Taylor Johnson, Emma Corrin, and William Dafoe. All right, what were your thoughts? When did you see it?
This is bold. And 20 years ago, I never would have thought this would happen. But I went with 2 of my sisters Christmas Day to see Nosferatu.
Which was an interesting choice to see it on Christmas Day, I have to tell you.
It was. And we asked our parents, knowing that they would say no, they would not want to go. They wouldn't even see it on a holiday, but Christmas no less. But it was like one of those years where my nieces and nephews weren't spending Christmas Day in Bellevue with my parents. It was an off year for them. They were coming the following day. So it was just like the adult kids, it was like we had nothing really planned that evening. So we had like an early Christmas dinner and then we went to the movie and saw it. And my overall opinion of it, I don't know the story of Nosferatu too well. And I know it's like heavily influenced by Dracula also. And I thought that there was going to be somewhat like of a twist or something on top of Nosferatu, but it seems like it was a pretty straight like adaptation of like the 1922 film. And also I saw it at a Regal and the screen wasn't very good there. I don't think we could it was a little like overexposed. So it was like hard to see, but I walked away being a little disappointed and even bored at times. I know. And
it was very long, so I understand where you're coming from in that respect. But I had never seen the 1922 film. As of this afternoon, I can no longer say that because I did watch it this afternoon, and it is a very faithful adaptation. I noted down some differences we can discuss later. But I don't know. I saw the trailer, and I just felt like there was a lot of Lily Rose Depp being possessed, and I kind of thought it was going to be exploitive. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, kind of like male gazy and annoying. And so I just kind of had like very low expectations. And we were debating between, my sister and I went to see it not on Christmas, but around the holidays. And we were debating between seeing that and seeing A Complete Unknown. And secretly, my vote was for A Complete Unknown. But for some reason, Caroline suddenly was like, no, let's see Nosferatu, which was kind of shocking if you know my sister. I feel like that wouldn't be something she necessarily would pick between those two choices. And I was sort of disappointed. So that lowered my expectations even further. But yeah, then about an hour before I saw it, I saw this tweet saying like, oh, I was in a theater with a bunch of men and I left, and like all the couple girls that were in there, like everybody loved it. and all the dudes didn't. And then I was like, that's interesting.
That is interesting.
And then I saw the movie, and I have to say that I really liked it. Like, I thought like it was like, I thought it was very spooky, kind of like sexy, even though not really the Dracula component, but just I'll kind of explain that maybe further later. And just like tonally really strong. And I keep thinking of like the images, like they're kind of haunting and painting like. But yeah, it was just a little bit too long. That was really my main complaint. But I don't know. I really kind of stuck with me, and my sister really liked it too.
Yeah, I do think that I'm alone. I think a lot of people like this movie a lot. Like I talked to our friend Vic, and she also really liked Nosferatu. I also got some feedback from my siblings over the holidays that I'm too critical about movies and that I often don't like any movie I see, which so I'm like, I need to be better about this, to be more positive about things.
I don't think that's true entirely.
Two of my siblings that I went with, I don't think they were too into it either, but now I don't know if I just influenced them to think negatively on that. So I need to be more conscious. What I really like about Nosferatu is the visuals were amazing, like the set design and like the mood and the tone, all that I thought was like so good. Like starting with Nicholas Holt's character in the beginning, traveling to Transylvania and like coming to the castle and all his interactions with Count Orlok, I thought were really like effective. And I was like gripped by all that. But then like once Nicholas Holt like returns and Lily Rose Depp's character with like Emma Corrin, like I thought they had a really like strong friendship and I liked seeing that. But yeah, I just feel like I was watching Lily like in a house all the time be possessed, or she was like by a lake possessed, or she was at her brother's house possessed. And I really feel like there was like too much to her and I didn't really get it. And it was like, I guess the story is like when she was a child, she has like a connection to some like spiritual level that not many people do. And she felt really lonely and she was calling out. And the person that she was calling out to turned out to just be a monster. And at first she was like really afraid of this monster, but then in the end she like accepts it to like save the town from getting murdered by him. And I thought that was really valiant of her, but then I just like I had to like read that. Like when I was watching the movie, I like didn't really connect that. I was like, why is she just letting this guy suck her chest to her and die on top of her? I don't know.
Wait, that's actually kind of fair. Like I feel like there was one monologue where that was explained, but it was kind of told in different pieces. Like I don't think it might actually have been multiple monologues or multiple lines of dialogue in different scenes. But I remember what I kind of liked about that was, the opening scene, as I recall, or maybe it's the second scene, is Lily Rose Depp, Ellen in the movie, crying in her Gothic scary room, saying like, "Please, somebody come to me," or something along those lines, expressing extreme loneliness. And then it's kind of the first encounter with this demonic figure. You don't really understand it, and there's like a sexual, I was going to say undertone, but I feel like overtone to what's going on. It's clear that they're, even though he's invisible for part of it, having sex. And then but yeah, then later on it kind of gets explained. I think it might have been William Dafoe's character who explains it. But yeah, I guess when she was a kid, she had like a connection to the spirit world, period. And it was something her dad noticed about her. I think her mother had passed away, and he called her something like, "Oh, you're my little changeling." Like he actually found it very endearing and sweet. But as she grew older, she was extremely isolated and lonely. And whether that's because of her, her unusual quality or just for another reason we don't really know. She she wants companionship. And so when she calls out, it's the first time that she's kind of touched upon something in the spirit world that's very dark and very dangerous. And I found that to be really like interesting. And I really liked how they have this like, there's like this dark impulse in her and this connection that she can't totally disavow because it's something she asked for, even though it terrifies her. And then like at the end of the movie, William Dafoe says something like, he tells her separately, the only way to combat evil is to look at it and to know it. And I thought that line like really thrilled me. Because I don't know why. I was very intrigued by it. So there was something about like the theme. I didn't expect it to go that way. And that made me like it. But I feel like if I hadn't heard that information, or if I had been like, if I'd gone to the bathroom during that part or whatever, then I probably would have felt the same as you.
Yeah, I didn't feel that when I was watching. And then honestly, when they were doing like the monologues, I'd kind of zone out. And I like
It was
when Count
boring
Orlok
late.
would speak. Sometimes it would be hard for him to understand. I was a little confused by it. So like those elements, it wasn't until I was reading it, and I was actually going through like a Reddit thread about Nosferatu, and someone left a comment on there, and I forget what it said. I wish I could pull it up, but it was a few days ago when I saw it. But they were saying that this movie pulls a lot from Bram Stoker's Dracula story. And I think there's a similar situation with whoever the woman is in that book, the relationship she has with Dracula. Like it's much more like fleshed out and explained. And you kind of like understand like the depths of her loneliness and like these like the dark desires and all that. Like I think are much more maybe explicit and explained.
Yeah.
So I would have like appreciated that more, but then it's interesting that you're telling me that like a lot of like women watching this movie had a much more positive reaction to it, and a lot of men had like a more negative reaction to it. And I wonder if that's like something that I'm just like not connecting because there's like a subtext that I'm not quite understanding.
It was just like some random tweet I saw, so who knows how accurate that is. But I do think there was something the scene that really made me, the backstory really clicked into. And I think maybe if there had been more background scenes, that maybe would have been more fleshed out for like anybody tuning in. But yeah, I guess there's a sense of like a female character who has this dark side or these dark impulses that are sexual in nature that feels like something that maybe a lot of, women could relate to. Like, especially because women are sort of told not to be very sexual in our culture or to be overly sexual. Like walking that line is so difficult. And so there's something about the fear of the perverseness of it, and then acknowledging that it exists within all of us is like maybe that's part of it. And then two, the scene that really that I loved was when, even though it was creepy, was when she's explaining what's going on to her husband, Nicholas Holt's character, and kind of saying like I've been possessed by him, and then she actually goes through like a fit of possession. They start to have sex, and she's saying something like, I want him to see how we do it, or how strong our connection is, or something like that. And it's like a very like violent, gory scene. Like I didn't watch some of it because sometimes there was like blood coming out of her eyes and her tongue was doing weird things. I don't really like. I'm like, no, I can't watch that. But then at the end of that, she starts crying and she's like, I don't, what I'm like, I'm ugly, I'm unclean, like trying to get Nicholas Hoult to reject her, which, is a pretty disturbing episode. So you think he might, and then he doesn't. And he's very like, he's clearly so in love with her. And I think that might have been what, I don't know. I feel like it was very, whatchamacallit, swoon worthy, perhaps is the phrase. So maybe it's that. And I'm jumping ahead to something I was going to talk about later, but I do think that's like kind of the queer element too, where the kind of dark desires that she either has or has been made to feel by Nosferatu, perhaps could be connected to queer desire. And then for her to then turn toward her husband who, accepts and loves her anyway, I felt like was an interesting component of the movie.
Mm-hmm. And if it's the same thing if it's the same scene, I think it is. She also, I think while she's possessed by the Count, she says to Nicholas Hoult that when he was at Count Orlok's castle, that he laid with the Count like a woman, and something to that effect, right? Where Nicholas allowed him to drink from his chest, which like the drinking from the chest is very much like a sexual like nature.
Exactly.
It took me a while to like connect and get used to. I thought it was interesting, like to have Nosferatu like go drink like directly from the heart instead of the neck. Mm-hmm. It was like really strange at first. I was like, when is he going to go for that neck? But he never did. He always goes like for the chest. And I think it was like another comment that I saw on Reddit, how it's like interesting that like this connection to like the difference between like love and desire to have like Nosferatu like sucking from the heart, like the symbol of love, but it's all very like sexual and desire. It was like really interesting to have that like direct connection than going for the neck.
I totally agree. Intense. And I read that was actually a key addition. So I can give a little bit of background on where Nosferatu comes from, which is relevant to what we were just talking about. Basically, back in the day, in the early 20th century, this production company was came into existence called Prana Film. It was a short-lived silent era German film studio founded by Enrico Deichmann and occultist artist Albin Grew. And they wanted to produce occult and supernatural films. Nosferatu was their only production, and they declared bankruptcy right after. And that's probably because they had gone to Bram Stoker's estate or descendants and asked, can we adapt this film or adapt this novel into a film? And they said, no. Mm-hmm. Then they decided to do it anyway. And it was an unauthorized, unofficial take on the 1897 novel. They made certain changes to try and skirt the laws. For example, in the book, Dracula's Dracula. In the movie, it's Count Orlok or Nosferatu. And I have a list of other changes that we can get to in a moment. Mm. But what ended up happening is the family was angry, even though there was a title card in the very original version of this film that acknowledged it was taken from, the source was Dracula. And they sued, and then they said they lost the case, and they were ruled to destroy all the copies. But several prints survived, which is the only reason we have the film today. And it only entered the public domain, Dracula, or maybe, I think Dracula in 2019. Hang on. Okay. And so why this matters is because Nosferatu is now considered a masterpiece of cinema and foundational to the genre of horror. And we basically were almost unable to see it because it would have, every single copy was going to be destroyed. And by luck, that did not happen, which I thought was pretty
like such a drastic measure to just be like, destroy all evidence. It's like there's nobody had any insights. Like maybe we should hold on to these copies, but it sounds like some people did figure that this would be important to film history later on. So to keep that,
clearly it was like, sad. Oh, this is maybe significant to film history. And maybe you will have more insight into this, but I read that there was only one camera, and so they only had one negative print. Does that feel common to you? Or
I mean, yeah, I'm sure at that time it would be, they wouldn't have multiple prints of something. I don't really know how the process is to like duplicate a print, but I'm sure they didn't have that technology yet. So they were just putting it right on one thing.
Very easy.
No. And I watched bits and pieces of Nosferatu, the 1922 version, because it's just like up on YouTube. It has like 3.6 million views on there. It's been up there, I think, for like 5 or 6 years. So ever since it entered the public domain. And I don't remember too many of the facts, but I don't know if you went to the comment section, but
I did not.
There were some of the most interesting, insightful comments of people being like, my grandmother was in the audience and watched this movie and said it was the most terrifying thing she ever saw. People were like commenting. They like were like telling facts about how like so many copies were like destroyed. Like thank goodness someone had the thoughtfulness to like keep a copy. So now we can watch it like on our phones off YouTube. But yeah, it seems to like really like resonate with people even before this new version. It seems like it's been common knowledge, and I'm sure, I mean, my first introduction to Nosferatu, and I'm sure a lot of people's first introduction is in the SpongeBob episode.
Oh, wait, I did not know about this. I did not.
Did you ever see the clip?
Well, now I have, because I read some article. It was like Gen Z and millennials got excited before the release of the movie because they remembered the SpongeBob episode. I was like, what are they talking about? I remember a SpongeBob episode.
It's just like a horrifying but hilarious like throwaway joke of like, I forget the episode specifically, but I think like the Krusty Krab or Squidward's house is being haunted, and they're trying to like, it's kind of like a Scooby-Doo moment of like revealing all of the, like to explain like why all these like mysterious things were happening. I think maybe it was like there was like a murderer on the loose, and it like turned out to just be someone with like a frying pan or something like that. And then Squidward was like, but wait a minute, like why were the lights flickering? And then someone's like, oh, it was just because it was Nosferatu. And it cuts to like a cutout of Nosferatu. And he's like flicking on and off the light. And it's so disturbing looking, but like such a throwaway line. And so that was like, I think a lot of people's first introduction to him. And honestly, it's probably why that video has so many views on YouTube, is because of SpongeBob.
I mean, I guess like when I saw it, when you just described it, like I do remember that, but it was definitely buried deep in my mind. But I can say that I knew the name Nosferatu, and I knew it was a vampire, but I didn't know how it related to Dracula, and that maybe was like a point of confusion that I wasn't aware of. So it's definitely in the zeitgeist to some extent. Like even if you don't really know anything about it, you probably have heard the word. Mm-hmm. And maybe it's because of SpongeBob. Or maybe it's not.
Yeah, not until you describing it, not until I was reading some of the YouTube comments, did I realize that. Well, I guess I saw Nosferatu. Well, does Robert Eggers' movie address that it's a interpretation of Dracula?
I don't know.
Maybe not.
I think it might say based on the 1922. Like, I think there might have been a tile that said based on the Nosferatu.
I think growing up, I also was familiar with Nosferatu and that he's a vampire, but I don't think I ever had I always thought it was something separate from Dracula. I didn't realize it pulled so much from the book, which now I'm really interested to read the book.
Well, yeah, me too, because I actually haven't read it, and I do love vampires. But here, I'll give you a quick summary of some of the changes that they tried to make to ensure it seemed different enough, even though they were unable to pass that test in court. And basically, the parts that were not in Dracula are the fact that Nosferatu comes with the plague, which I thought was a great addition because it's just metaphorically very strong, and also all those rats.
That was really effective in the 1922 version even has that part with the rats coming ashore.
Oh, I saw them. I did not want to, but I saw them.
But yeah, I thought that was really effective and like jaw dropping in the new movie when the ship crashes and all the rats come out. I was like, oh my god,
that part was so cool. Also, the fact that it kind of was like a ghost ship, and then the fact that, which obviously I should have seen coming, but that the friend or brother, I'm not quite sure how Nicholas Hoult and the other actor were connected, where Lily Rose Depp goes to stay in the house of the shipmaster and his wife while Nicholas is on his trip to Transylvania. Well, actually, I don't think it was Transylvania in this movie, but wherever he was going to visit Count Orlok. And yeah, the ship comes up and it was just so ghostly. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, the husband, he's the ship guy. And he had to go out into the night to see the ship. I thought that was like a cool narrative surprise for me.
Well, I think I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure Aaron Taylor Johnson is Lily Rose Depp's brother in the movie. I could be wrong, but I think that's
that is what's supposed to be here. I wrote this down. Apparently that was her brother, I think. And then Emma Corrin was not supposed to be the wife. They were supposed to be siblings as well. So that was a change, but that's neither here nor there. It's not that interesting. But yes, in addition to the plague, they changed the location to Germany, which, possibly was preying on German fears at the time related to the other. And there has been much criticism of the original Nosferatu, saying that perhaps there's an anti-Semitic undertone based on the way they designed Count Orlok or Nosferatu. And based on the fact that the character in the silent film looks a little bit like a rat, then there's the connection with the plague and all the rats, and just playing with stereotypes that existed at the time. And so that's something to think about in analyzing this film. But also, in addition, they also added the fact that Nosferatu came from the devil or a demonic origin, which was not present in the film and had to do with the filmmakers and producers' interest in the occult at the time. Dracula creates new vampires, but Orlok kills his victims. Dracula was only weakened by sunlight, but Orlok can be killed if he drinks the blood of a virgin and witnesses the rising sun. And then Orlok looks disturbingly inhuman, and Dracula looks like a person and could pass unnoticed until you realize he's, occasionally drinking blood.
Mm-hmm.
So
those are the differences between the 1922 movie and Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Right? Correct. And I don't think there were really that many differences between the current film and
no. And I was surprised to see how many specific similarities. Like we listed the rats crashing ashore. I thought that would have been a new addition. But even to Nicholas Holt's character getting a paper cut or whatever at the castle, that also happens in the 1922 movie to entice Count Orlok to drink his blood. But
there were even some lines that were the same. I noticed.
Yeah.
There were also some really shockingly modern lines. One of the drivers which is I guess not in the new one, drivers take Nicholas Holt's character. Okay, no. Drivers take the husband character in the 1922 version, whose name is Hutter, to the castle. And then at a certain point they say, we can't go any further. And they basically say, you could pay us anything. We won't go further. We're not going. It is creepy on the other side of the pass. It was like creepy.
Does sound like a modern.
Like, is that something people would say back then?
Yeah.
And then there was another part where Nosferatu is like, sees a picture of Ellen, the wife, and he goes, "Your wife has a beautiful neck."
People, the comment section of YouTube, they were making fun of that line. They're like, "Way to be direct, Count Orlok. You really showed all your cards right there." And also something that was interesting to read, which it's YouTube comments. I don't know if it's true, but they were saying in the 1922 version that at the time a lot of people couldn't read, and so in the movie theater, people would read the dialogue out loud.
Aww.
So that people who couldn't read would know what they were talking about. So it was like a group participation, you know, almost kind of like people like singing hymns, which is a really like strange thing to think about as you.
Wait, that's so sweet
the
of those
community of films, yeah.
Old-timey film goers.
Yeah, the what you were talking about, just the design of Count Orlok in the 1922 version, because he is quite different looking in this new version, which a lot of people comment on the mustache specifically.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot about the mustache.
But it's interesting that there might be changing it to Germany, and that there might be ties to anti-Semitism is interesting, that I didn't really consider. And the fact that Nosferatu even looks kind of like a rat, I didn't think of that until you said it. He's like the long teeth. He is bald, like long hair. It's all very, the connections to it, I think, are very strong.
Well, the Wikipedia portion that discussed this had like an unusual, or they had this posited this theory that I'm curious to see how you react to it. They were like, well, fun fact, this is Queer Cinema Catchup. The director was F.W. Murnau, and he was gay.
Oh,
and
no
so
way.
this is exciting information. I have a little bit more to tell you about that in a moment. But before I get there, they speculated that because he was gay and very aware of how German society treated marginalized individuals, it would be unlikely that he would use such tropes in his films, and that it must have been unintentional.
I don't
and
think
I was
that's
sort of
true.
like, what? I was like, just because, I mean, ideally, yeah, but I don't know if that immediately
he wasn't out at
you...
the time, right?
Well, I guess it was pre World War II. So, I mean, in certain, right? I guess I should know more about this, but certain areas of Germany, like Berlin and things like that, there was a strong queer community, but I don't know. I don't really know enough about it.
Yeah.
But I thought that was a weird piece of analysis by Wikipedia.
To just assume that. Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know about that. I feel like.
In fact, I would argue that the problem with, if he did have issues with his sexuality, I think he'd probably be more, I don't know, maybe he'd want to push down other groups even more to kind of distract from his own problems that he had with himself. Assuming that he had.
I feel like both of those are valid readings, but yeah, exactly. I feel like that's both. But yeah, and then the evidence that the fact that this seems sort of anti-Semitic maybe pushes it over into the, the evidence kind of sways you one way or the other. And I don't know.
Interesting.
I'll just tell you a little bit more about him, and then we can kind of dive maybe more into the film itself. But a lot of the people that worked in this production, including Murnau, were in World War I. And Albin Grau, who's the producer who really was interested in the occult, he kind of told this probably apocryphal, untrue story while he was in the Serbian front. He talked to a local farmer who told him that his father had become an undead vampire. And that was kind of what sparked his interest in this story. And then the director, Murnau, he was also involved in the war, survived 8 crashes while he was in the German Air Force. And also his longtime partner, who was a poet, passed away during the war. And then the actor, Max Schreck, who plays Count Orlok, similarly had a war experience, and many thought that he probably developed PTSD from it, and who would often kind of be like a loner, go on long walks in the woods with no one around. And so basically there's a thought that maybe their experience of the trench warfare in World War I informed this film and the way that the decision to explore vampires, given that blood and human carnage, death, destruction was something they probably all experienced firsthand. So I thought that was kind of an interesting.
And these are the actors in the movie, in the 1922 movie?
Yeah, the people that were involved in the production. And apparently vampire legends are sort of correlated with periods of mass like when there's plague and things like that, oftentimes vampires get talked about more, in at least historically. So there's that element too.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I also forget, maybe it was like a Reddit thread on Nosferatu that I was reading this, but people were like saying that just the whole concept of like vampires, kind of what you were talking about too, is countries would, to like the people of a different country, they'd say like, yeah, they like eat and drink the blood of people just to try to like the people of Romania, like Yugoslavia, like all these, like, because it was like harder to have, you don't really have contact with these other countries. So then like rumors will spread and everyone around you is like the enemy, or they're like almost inhuman the way they are. So it's kind of like the concept of vampires or these monsters.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense because Eggers, the director of the current film, was also very interested in vampires for a long time. And he said something like, in cinema, when you start to look at myths about vampires or firsthand accounts about vampires from back in the day, you discover that they're not even drinking blood. They're just strangling people or suffocating people or fucking them to death, which is very, intense quote. But I guess that would kind of, if it is about the other people who are kind of coming into a land that is not theirs and potentially, I don't know. I think that makes sense. Either way.
I also remember like in grade schools, people would talk about like one of the things like going around, they were like, like they were real vampires, but they didn't like bite people's necks with their teeth. They had really long fingernails. They'd puncture people's throats with their fingernails. I was like, oh my gosh, that's terrifying. It just, I don't know. That's like even more creepy visual, or like dirty fingernails puncturing someone's neck.
I don't know. I got all my vampire information from The Little Vampire and my mom's date with the vampire, whatever that movie was called. And that was where my
knowledge of vampires,
my knowledge came from. And then of course, when I was in high school, from Twilight.
Yeah. I knew not too long ago had a Twilight series.
Yes, this time last year, my friends and I, we did an entire rewatch of the series, and I highly recommend for anyone wanting to have a good laugh and experience the. Didn't you watch some of it too? Did we have you come downstairs?
Is the second to last one Breaking Dawn Part 1?
Yeah.
You screen Part 1 at our house, and then I remember I've only seen Twilight, and so I was like watching this. I was like, oh, it's like pretty good, and Bella's getting like she's really weak towards the end of the movie, and she's like really fragile. I'm like, how's she gonna get out of this? And like the camera's like zooming in on her, and she's like passed out. I feel like the last 30 minutes, and then all of a sudden her eyes open up and reveals that she's become a vampire. And I was like, oh my gosh! And then the movie ends. I was like, what? It's over. So it's a little unfinished for me. I haven't finished the series.
Yeah, just that whole sequence is like really crazy, and just I guess like vampire movies are always like good for metaphors, but the metaphor in that one is like a very thinly veiled like pro-life message, because Bella basically won't. It's a pro-life and like a pro chastity, I guess, message, because Bella decides that she would like to. Her and Edward come to an agreement, her vampire boyfriend, that she will not be turned into a vampire until she has sex, because she wants a human experience before she departs the land of the living. But he won't do that unless they're married first. So that's kind of the sequence of events there. Then they go on their honeymoon while she's still human, and they have sex. And for some reason, this enables them to conceive without them realizing this is a possibility. And the baby is some kind of unknown entity and is very strong, growing very rapidly, draining the life out of Bella. And so the end of this movie, like Kristen Stewart is like emaciated, probably about to die. And she and another vampire family member have colluded to ensure that nobody can prevent her from having this baby, because, it's her baby. She wants the baby to live. And the sister who's involved in helping loves children, is very sad she could never have children as a vampire. And so she's agreed. She basically thinks if I help, I'll get to raise this baby because Bella's going to die. And that is kind of the thinly veiled
metaphor
moral message, but it leads to some crazy images. And you're like, what?
Yeah. It was
and then at one point Bella has to like drink blood.
Yeah.
Because she was as a human.
Edward turns her into a vampire, even though he doesn't want her to.
Yes.
But it's like the only way for her to live.
They're like
is
trying to see.
become
No
undead.
one thinks it's going to work, but of course it works because it's a book. And then, yeah. Anyway, side note about another vampire tale.
And so something you mentioned about the 1922 movie is Nosferatu. He can only die if he has sex with a virgin or if he sees the daylight. Is
Actually,
that right?
both has to happen at once.
And so my interpretation in the new movie is he desires Ellen so strongly that he's willing to
Die.
die for it.
I guess that's one you could say that, but I thought so. They're together. He's sucking her blood. They're having sex, and he pulls away, and she says again, or like more, or something like that. And my interpretation was that it was just kind of lust that made him forget that he could be in danger if he didn't get out of there.
I could see that. It didn't seem, maybe it's been a hot minute since I saw it, but when he's like dying, like it wasn't, I could totally have it wrong, but I don't think he was like screaming like, oh no, like
that's true.
He like was dying. I'm sure he like, I didn't think that he necessarily wanted to die. Maybe it was like a little bit of a surprise, but it wasn't like, damn it, you got me. You know, it was like, but yeah. I think Ellen definitely was intentionally keeping him for longer to kill him. Cause that's like, yeah, it's like, she's kind of, Willem Dafoe says that she has to like she's sacrificing herself in order to save the whole town from being murdered by him.
Well, I kind of like then that he might, I think it's kind of beautiful then in a way that he.
But like, that's what he wanted most, right? Like he seemed to desire Ellen of all people.
Of everything, right? Out of everything. I agree.
Yeah. But I just didn't really know how to feel about, again, like all my times I saw Ellen, like Lily Rose Depp was doing like really impressive, like possessed work that I've never really seen before. That felt new and unique. And I thought it was really physically impressive, but I feel like I just felt like an emotional disconnect with her, and maybe that's intentional. And I overall felt the entire story of Nosferatu, this new version, didn't feel as strong to me.
I think it is all about expectations, because I sort of like, I don't know, we watched The Idol together last year. Yeah. I didn't really have like high hopes for Lily's performance, but I was really impressed by it for some.
All the performances I thought were amazing.
I agree.
No knocks on that, but I think, and I'm embarrassed to say, but I've never seen The Witch actually.
Oh, it's so good.
I definitely know like the scenes and the moments. I've never seen The Northman. I'm sure he has some other movies in there too.
I haven't seen any of his other films, but now I'm thinking I might be like his kind of fan. I might be a fan, you know? I think I like whatever he did, whatever you want to say he's doing exactly.
Yeah. So maybe I'm just not giving the movie enough credit for what it's doing. I guess maybe I was just like looking at it from a more like literal interpretation, and some things just felt like unnecessarily gross and violent to me. Like you mentioned, there were some of the jump scares with like Lily Rose Depp like being like possessed and her eyes were bleeding, and
yeah, I didn't like that.
I was kind of like what? And then like Aaron Taylor Johnson, when his wife dies and he's like so distraught, and then he has like sex with her corpse. Like I guess they didn't show it, but it was like implied. I was like, what? I was like, gross.
Yeah, you're highlighting some really disturbing things.
Like also like Emma Corrin, like I felt like there wasn't too much to her character. Like yes, I felt like she was supportive with Ellen, even if at times she didn't necessarily believe her. She seems to genuinely be concerned about her. But then it's like when Count Orlok comes to town, and then like Emma herself, has she been bitten, or she's like having spells now? And then she
was attacked.
She was attacked.
But it's sort of ambiguous because Lily Rose Depp has a dream of Nosferatu, wakes up because they shared the bed that night because the husband was gone dealing with the ship, and then she's on the ground and rats are eating her. So it's a little bit unclear, and then she's sick. Yeah. So it's a little bit unclear if it was like really Nosferatu or the plague getting her, or a combination.
I don't think you have to like literally like know what happened to her, but it's either something happened to her where she's now affected by it. And I was like, please you've like shown her children multiple times. Like, I just know, like, what fucked up thing are you going to show me that happens to them? And it's like Emma's like going through hell. She's possessed. She like hears a noise and she leaves her room and she like goes into the child's room and like Count Orlok's already like murdered the children and like drops their corpses on the ground. And I was just like, I just was so, I just like wasn't emotionally, I don't know. I just like wasn't in the mindset. I thought I was like doing all these like really like moving and like possessive things that I thought were enough. And those just like felt so graphically explicit. I was just like, fuck, I don't know. I feel like I didn't see enough of like Emma with her children to like feel any like warmth or connection. Like it just felt like there was like misery from the get-go, and it was like great. Add the children getting murdered on top of it. I don't know. I just kind of, and that's kind of why I've had some distance with The Witch, is because I'm like, it feels like it's a really slow moving movie with a lot of misery.
I prefer The Witch definitely to Nosferatu, just because like, I mean, it is a lot of misery. Maybe I just really like misery.
I don't mind. I want to see the change, I guess. And I don't feel like I want to.
Yeah.
I
will say,
if you go into the misery, like I want to see like what the world, like I want to see like the positive aspects first to see how much the world was turned upside down to like get me more like emotionally invested. Whereas like before I'm like, well, Ellen seems to be really distraught at the beginning of the movie. She doesn't want her husband to leave and now she's possessed and she ends up sacrificing herself at the end. Like I just didn't really understand.
It's like dark to darker. Yeah, I mean, Caroline did say, had a really cool, my sister had a really interesting point when we left the theater. She was like, I just wish we had seen when she met Nicholas Hoult and how that all went down, because it sounded like prior to his appearance, it was a very dark period in her life where she was having these fits. Her father suspected the sexual nature of this particular spiritual connection and didn't like her anymore. And she was very even more lonely than when she called out for Nosferatu or whoever to come answer her prayers in the middle of the night. And so, yeah, maybe if we had seen that kind of blissful period where they fell in love, that might have made it even stronger.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, just to help flesh some things out a bit. But maybe that's more just personal taste than what was needed for the movie.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a good point. I mean, because The Witch like is very bleak from start to end, from the beginning to the end. But there's it's definitely like a more, I guess, depending on your reaction to it, like a more positive ending, I guess.
Yeah. It's, in the clips that I've seen, it's like unsettling and also uncertain what's really happening until the end, right?
Yes. That you don't know. Basically, The Witch, for those that don't know, is about a family. It seems to be like in puritanical America back before we were formerly America, and the family gets exiled for some unknown reason from their very faithful community and have to go live on this farm that's completely isolated. And then one day, Anya Taylor-Joy was playing like a 13-year-old or something, a very young girl. Her youngest sibling, who's a baby, vanishes under her care. And it's very strange because she's playing peekaboo with the baby, and one minute the baby's there, one minute the baby's not, and she cannot find her sister or brother. I can't remember which, if it was a boy or a girl. And the family, blames her. There's a question of whether there's like a witch in the woods that maybe took the child. There's some scenes to suggest that there are, but you can't tell if it's just, if there's something supernatural going on, or if the family in its isolation and with its very strict rules about how to behave and how to be is starting to go a little mental, and you don't really have an answer. But then in the end, you do get an answer for those who would like to check it out.
Yeah. Which I think would be effective. And that's not to say like Nosferatu's not effective again. Like the whole time, like the movie from beginning to when Nicholas Hoult is in the castle, like I was like mesmerized. I was haunted. It feels very I wouldn't say it's like, I think you even texted me that it wasn't necessarily scary, but it like captures like that Gothic vibe.
Yes.
Extremely well in like kind of a unique way while still being traditional. Like, and so that's why, I guess my expectations, I was going in expecting some like more modern twists to it, but
And there really wasn't at all.
Yeah, it just seemed to be like, and maybe that's the whole twist to it, is Eggers is like, was actually being very respectful to the source material of Nosferatu and just wanted to do a proper remake of it. And it was really interesting. He was interviewed on the Big Picture podcast, which of course I listened to, and it was so interesting to hear him speak because, and again, he might have done more feature films than The Witch, The Northman, and Nosferatu, but he was talking about like The Northman, when he directed that movie, had a much larger budget, had a lot more people involved. I think The Witch is a much more, as you were saying, isolated movie, a smaller cast. And he was just he was speaking to some of his insecurities directing such a big movie, and like even like figuring out the finances of the Northman. It was like a really big challenge for him. And he said that he learned a lot from making that movie that helped him, you know, feel like he was a real director, and helped him like accomplish like, and giving him the confidence to direct Nosferatu. Because I think Nosferatu is something that he's wanted to direct, I think even before The Witch.
I think, so I have a couple quotes about that too. And I dropped my phone, which has my quotes. So one second. But yes, I this was a little bit confusing. I couldn't find any, I didn't get an answer on this, but it sounds like he was supposed to direct Nosferatu second, and then for some reason did not. So, but then he ultimately thought it was a good thing. And the reason he thinks that is because, yes, he had an early fascination with Nosferatu. It ignited a passion for filmmaking that would shape his career. I think he first saw when he was 9 years old. Okay, and then it says he was actually became inspired by the original screenplay and the novel Dracula, and with his high school classmate Ashley Kelly Tata adapted the story for the stage, performing it at their school. The production caught the eye of Edward Langlois, who invited them to transfer to New York's Edwin Booth Theater, which seems pretty amazing for a high school student. But he then said something along the lines of vampirism and Dracula is something I've been thinking about for a long time. I was back when I first wanted to make it, I was still too contaminated by the cinematic tropes. And so you're infusing things you're reading with cinematic tropes that aren't there. In doing the research to write this script, I needed to be disciplined to forget what I knew. And then you start looking at, this is the quote I said earlier, you start looking at really early vampire accounts and you're like, they're not even drinking blood. They're just strangling people or suffocating people or fucking them to death. And that was really interesting. And then he talks a little bit about how Orlok was partially inspired by Dracula, but that there was this decision to have him speak like a different language, an extinct language called Dacia in the film. And he says he was inspired by another film called The Phantom Carriage as well.
Oh, okay. That was a really cool moment in Nosferatu, the new one, when the Phantom Carriage of this movie arrives, where Nicholas Hoult is like walking in the street and the horses like are running at him. It looks like they're going to run over him, but then they pull up and pick him up in the carriage. I thought it was a really cool. It looks like a very like visual like Sleepy Hollows. That was really cool. I mean,
yes, I agree.
You said it earlier. Like this whole movie, you could freeze so many there's so many moments in this movie where you freeze a frame and it looks like a painting. Like even Count Orlok like dying on Ellen's like on top of her is like such a visual image.
Like it looked like a painting.
It looked like a painting, and so that was all really effective. And yeah, I guess talking to on your quote, now that I mentioned it earlier, but the decisions, a big change from the 1922 version to this new version is the way that Count Orlok looks. He has the mustache a lot of people comment on, which at first I was like, this is a very distinct choice, but I saw in like a Reddit thread people were commenting that I think he's a count, not an oligarch or anything like that, but I think people of like a certain like level of prestige, like in like the surrounding Romania or wherever they are, like at that time, like had like a mustache as like a status symbol, I think.
Yeah, I read that he really tried to look to be faithful to Transylvanian like the way a lord in that area would have dressed. And so the coat's very accurate. His entire appearance is drawing on details that were period accurate, which I think is a cool feature of the film. And it also is reminding me of another scene I loved when Hutter or Nicholas Hoult gets to the village right beneath the castle the day before he was set to go. And all the village people are kind of dancing around him. And it's getting like, it's almost like, I think the camera's like spinning around him, showing all these people kind of performing, playing instruments, singing, dancing, etc. And then he gets to the threshold and he turns around to kind of look at them all and they begin to laugh at him. And you have no idea why. No. I love that part.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, I still really know, but you just kind of realize that at first you think that they're just like these jovial, happy people, but it seems like they know something
like
that
sinister.
He doesn't. Sinister. And then when he goes inside, the one woman seems to be like maybe not genuinely concerned, but she's like, you can't go to that place. And this place that's supposed to be, he's like, he wants to pay extra. He'll pay double the rent to stay there that night. But they seem to be very like inhospitable to him. And then he even travels like that was, yeah, all this was very effective. And he follows them where they murder a person in their grave. And could it be a vampire? Is it connected to the possession that Ellen had talked about earlier? Like it's all very like interesting. And
my favorite part of that sequence, he kind of sneaks out to follow them. He sees like the village people bringing like a naked woman on a horse through the woods. And he's like, what is that? So he sneaks out and then, he sees them exhume a grave and put a stake through. Unclear if it's like a living person's heart or
I think they use a metal shovel, which I think is also more true to like true like Dracula lores. You don't kill them with a wooden stake, you kill them with metal, I think.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I didn't know that. Well, but then my favorite part was they see him, they kind of react, it cuts to black, and then he's in bed waking up. And it seems like maybe he's gonna think it was a dream. And the camera moves down his bed and he's looking at his shoes, which are still on and which are caked in mud. So he knows it was real, which people in my theater went, or maybe that was just me.
My audience, they weren't too into it, I feel like.
I don't think my audience was either.
Maybe I was reading the energy wrong, but it seems like people were bored, which probably added. Not in the beginning. Everyone was like really drawn in the beginning, but I think in the middle, towards the end, everyone was kind of like, it sensed like they weren't as enraptured by it. But yeah, I think that's a really interesting repeating beat with Hutter is things would happen to him in the evening and they would hard cut to the next day. And you're like, is that a dream? Is that not a dream? And then there'd be something physically on his body that would show that, no, like that really happened.
It was real.
Like, I think the first time that the Count like sucks from Hutter's chest for the first time and they're like floating in the air, like in the castle, and then it cuts to the next morning and he looks at his chest and I think he has like a wound, like a bite mark in his chest.
Yeah, it's that part is all really great.
Yeah, the chills, like when he goes to like during the daylight, you think he's gonna be safe. He goes to like find the Count's like tomb or coffin, and when he opens it up, he goes to murder him, but then like the Count like stands up. He's like this terrifying nude figure. And like the dogs start chasing Nicholas Hoult, and that was all just like very like I was very like enthralled and engaged that whole time and terrified. And
they were apparently real wolves or hounds, and Nicholas Hoult said that it like really helped him portray fear. Yeah,
that'd be terrifying. If you're being chased by dogs, yeah.
And then speaking of the animals, they used 5,000 rat actors.
What does that mean? Rat actors?
Like the rats, a lot of them. I mean, they the further out they go out on the screen, it's CGI, but they used
the base level are real rat actors.
Yes. I was watching this interview with the cast and they were asked about the rats and like all of their body language, they all kind of like stiffen. Like nobody wants to talk about it. And then Edgar starts talking and he's like, yeah, it really adds a lot. I forget he gives some explanation as to why they use the real rats. And then they asked Emma Corrin who had to put them on her. And she was like, yeah, I've been asked about this a lot. And, I don't really remember a lot because I think I blacked most of it out. And she said, but it does add to the performance because like it is such a weird, terrible experience.
Because there's a rat on you.
And then William Dafoe comes in and he goes, I quite liked them. I really liked one. They were very sweet so cute, almost too sweet, you know? Like I'd be looking at them and they'd be kind of be friendly and they'd stand up on their hind legs. And I'd be like, this isn't right for the scene.
Okay.
As you know, I hate vermin and I did not like watching them.
That was one of our first bonding experiences when you moved in, as I unleashed.
It really was.
I had rats in my previous apartment.
Oh, then I was like, I understand you completely.
Yeah. But we haven't talked too much about Willem Dafoe. And I don't know how many bullet points are left to talk about on your sheet, if there's anything you want to talk about.
Not really that many, honestly. Like we hit SpongeBob. We talked about a queer reading.
Yeah.
We talked about some scenes. We talked about the rats. We talked about the history of the film. The only thing is I did look up some facts about German Expressionism, which the 1922 film is a seminal piece of German Expressionism. And just to explain what that is very quickly, it was a film and art movement that emerged in Germany in the 1910s and 1920s, particularly after World War I. It was characterized by its highly stylized, surreal, and distorted aesthetics, which sought to express emotional experience rather than physical reality. The movement is deeply tied to the cultural and economic upheaval in Germany during the Weimar Republic, reflecting themes of alienation, anxiety, and the subconscious. Notable films include The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, Nosferatu, Metropolis, and M.
Yeah.
But no, William Dafoe.
Yeah, I thought he was good. There was like a part of me where I felt like it was a repeat of his character kind of in
Poor Things. Yep.
Poor Things.
Yep.
It kind of felt like a continuation of that character. And I love Willem Dafoe and I love like his zany energy, but there's something in this movie like when his character shows up, I'm kind of like, really, we're going to throw another character into this? And I don't know. It was fine. I kind of am like not here or there about the character. I don't necessarily
dislike it. I feel like they didn't need
but
two doctors. You know what I mean?
They didn't need two doctors.
I feel like that was a little too faithful to the original or whatever.
Yeah.
But you know what I found out is that, okay, so they changed all the names from Dracula, but William Dafoe is actually playing Van Helsing.
Oh.
Which kind of makes more sense. You're like, oh. Yeah. And then like the real estate broker who's the boss of Nicholas Hoult, who's actually working for Nosferatu.
That was interesting.
He's Renfield.
Nicholas Hoult plays Renfield in another movie.
I know.
We never saw.
William Dafoe played Count Orlok in another film as well.
Oh, no way.
There's always weird things. And like apparently William Dafoe was actually supposed to be cast as Count Orlok in this film. And then Bill Skarsgård was supposed to be Nicholas Holt's character.
Okay.
And Anna Taylor-Joy was supposed to be the Lily Rose Depp character. And Harry Styles was supposed to be Nicholas Holt's character. I feel like they did a better job in this version.
I think even with like The Idol, there was something that was like my first introduction to Lily Rose Depp. And even though the story of that and the dialogue of that is dog shit, there's something about her that I'm just like, whatever the it factor is, I really feel some emotion. There's more to her than just like being a gorgeous woman.
Yes.
I think that she was able to showcase more of those talents in Nosferatu. Would I have liked to have seen Anya Taylor-Joy in this movie? Absolutely. But I'm glad that Lily got a chance to like showcase, her
I agree
emotional and physical abilities to act
and have like a different outlet other than The Idol,
yes.
different.
Yes. Thankfully. And then, Bill Skarsgård is covered up in so much like costume and prosthetics that
I wouldn't have known it was him.
You wouldn't know it's him, but I feel like you could feel his like physical height presence was there.
Definitely.
But yeah, he like becomes that character. And then, like I think all the performances really good. But yeah, like Willem Dafoe, I guess the twist to his character is that he like knows that Ella needs to die.
Yeah.
And so he's been like intentionally taking Hutter all over town to just distract him so Count Orlok can get to Ellen, which it wasn't like it was like a reveal, but it wasn't like, again, it wasn't like a dramatic like big bad evil. It seems like it was a necessary thing that Willem Dafoe knew that Hutter wouldn't be able to accept, which and it's again like how long can you make this movie, but it would have been nice to just like feel more of the happy moments between Hutter and Ellen prior to all this happening, to like really feel that like emotional intensity. And obviously I should be able to extrapolate, like I know when people get married usually means they really love each other and care about each other, so I should be able, but
not always.
Not always. Yeah, but I just wish I had like seen some of that before to really feel that like emotional. There was just like a part of me that I know like the intention of a lot of things, but I walked away just kind of feeling hollow about what I was seeing. I was like, this feels like a very beautiful movie, but I guess I don't really feel like, and maybe that speaks to like the traditional Gothic aspects of this movie, but I just like didn't really feel the emotional pull to it.
I mean, I guess like you feel very empty watching the film, which perhaps could be a turnoff, but I found that to be like a reflection of what she must have felt like. And I liked that. Yeah. I don't know why.
Even though on my first watch, I walked away thinking that I disliked it. Like the imagery is definitely stuck with me, and like the aspects of different parts of the story have stuck with me. So maybe I like it more than I initially give my negative thoughts on it. And like, I'd feel remiss if we didn't address like another really visual part of the movie is when Count Orlok, which I thought was like hilarious too, that Nicholas Hoult is like sent to the Count to get him to move to their town. I thought it was like such an interesting like aspect of it, is like to prepare him to transfer him to this other, to their town. I thought it was really interesting. And again, speaks to like bringing the enemy to the town. But once Count Orlok arrives to this German town, there's the shadow of the hand over the city. It was like so effective. I think that was in the trailer too, but I was like, that was a really
that looked amazing,
impactful visual. Yeah.
And it was cool to see in the silent film that was kind of inspired by the silent film, because there was a part where Ellen is, I guess, dreaming or waking up, but kind of possessed, and the shadow, which is in the end too, but the hands are on the wall. So I liked that it kind of had a connection to the original,
the homage to the original
film.
Yeah. A really beautifully
artful
movie.
An artful film. But yeah, I mean, like even talking about it, I kind of see what you're saying, because it's kind of like so heavy, so dark, so kind of one note, that there's not really that much, that we've said so many facts, but there's not that much to like bounce around with.
I mean, I guess it's like rewatchable because of the visuals, but there's like, if I were to recommend this movie to someone, I would be like, you got like, oh, like the visually like is stunning, but I'm not like, you need like the story itself. I don't know. I'm somewhere in between. I really respect it for like the filmmaking craft of it. Yeah.
Same.
Cool.
Huh. I'm just like reflecting. I just feel like if like usually there's like more life to it. Just like I feel like we're on the same page for almost everything, and we can like acknowledge its strengths, right? But then it's like there's kind of like because like that's really what it was. So maybe now I'm kind of in my mind coming back around to your perspective and being like, did I like it as much? Did I just like the metaphor? And is that what made me excited? Because I didn't know that was going to be a part of the movie.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a matter of expectations, being surprised about that. I think, and that's what we ask most for a movie, is to make us think. Or reflect.
Feel. I'm going to go with feel.
Yeah.
That's what I want most of all.
So do I. And
I like, for the record, that I like, you should criticize. That's what we do on this podcast.
We're
critical thinkers, so you don't criticize movies too much. It's part of your job.
Now that my siblings are like, wow, you really hate movies, which Allison and I are going to talk about Wicked eventually on the podcast.
You guys, I cannot wait. And we're also going to be seeing Wicked this week.
Actually,
on Thursday.
I thought it was on the weekend.
So did I. But then, like in my calendar, I have it on the 12th. But the tickets, I think I'll double check.
Okay.
You guys, I'm a little confused. I'm still in Pennsylvania. I'm supposed to come back on the 7th, but I can't come back at that time. I'm supposed to be working. So I have to figure out another time to come back. But it has to be by the 9th, theoretically, for Wicked. But maybe not.
I am so excited. I hope you make it back safely. If you have to take the ship that Count Orlok took to get here, well, actually don't. Because it's with rats.
Too many rats.
That's too. I'd say I'd do anything for Wicked, but I would not ride a rat-infested ship.
Me neither. That's one step too far.
Why did I bring up Wicked? I guess I just wanted an excuse to bring up Wicked.
I mean, can you just feel the life coming back into us?
Yes.
We were just talking about this deadly, dark film.
My siblings say that I am like a hater on a lot of movies, so now I'm being more self-conscious and a little insecure about that. But like, spoiler alert, Wicked, I fucking loved every second of that movie. And I cannot wait I have no idea what happens in part 2. Well, actually, I saw some spoilers, but I'm excited to see the stage play and discover what's
going to
happens to all the
happen.
beloved characters.
I think they're going to make changes to the sequel,
movie.
though.
I think so. I'm hoping for some more. I don't even know. I don't know a single song from the second act. So I'm excited to see the stage play version of that.
I have some favorites from the second act. I'm going to have you guess, actually. That's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to tell you. That sounds like a fun game.
Yeah. I don't think Wicked is next of our
No.
movies. But that will be coming to you. I think at the end of January that episode comes out, but we'll go big for that. I'm really excited to talk about that. And yeah, I guess should we sign off?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think this has been Queer Cinema Catchup. I'm Allison.
I'm Joe.
And this is the podcast where we talk about movies, TV, and miscellaneous items through a queer lens. You can find us on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Letterboxd. And please check us out. Please subscribe. Please listen.
Please.
Thank you for listening.
Goodbye.
Bye.